Can it go any louder? I try. I keep pressing the button. Welcome back. Artist Journal, May 5th, 2025, broadcasting from the inner half of the nervous system. My name's Adrian Pocobelli. Enjoying the sun here in Berlin, Germany, recovering from gallery weekend. I just took Sunday off. There is much to do this week as well, so kind of an early start for me today. Happily. You know, my sweet spot in terms of my schedule is go to sleep at, let's say, 10:30, like turn out the light and lie on your pillow and close your eyes. And then you're up at 6:30 and you've had, maybe you've woken up for a little bit during the night and you've basically had your 7 hours and you're up at 6:30. That is the sweet spot. And then, just a final point on this is, the two things that really make a successful day for me is I start with art. It's the first thing after I get a coffee and sit down. Before I do anything, I start with art, even if it's, let's say today, very busy day, all sorts of stuff going on, some conference, here in Berlin, unrelated to art, the Global Solutions Initiative. I don't even know how I get invited to these things, but I've been a couple of times, I think the last year or two, where they discuss world issues. I think they're policy maker. Anyways, too much information, TMI. But it's a busy day, all to say, and I have a bunch of other stuff to do today too. And what I'm saying, the reason I tell you all this is because for me, basically the essential ingredients of what I would call a successful day is art session in the morning. And then before I go to sleep, and I've only done this about, let's say, 15 times this year, if that, maybe 10. But I did it last night and the night before. Before I turn out the light, I record what happened that day, and if there are any photos that were in that day, I also put them in just into a Google Docs. I turn on the mic. And I started doing that just a few times last year. And it's one of the most satisfying things ever, because when you reopen that journal, a personal journal, so to speak, and you see the pictures and you see the thoughts, you are transported immediately to that day. And it's almost like you have saved a day. It's like, and in a weird way, you've hit save as to a certain degree on your day. Whereas when you don't do it, at least for me personally, yeah, I kind of remember stuff, right? But, what happened 7 days ago? And am I going to remember all those details? Heck no. In fact, the reason why I do it at the end of the day, finally, is because I won't even remember the details after my sleep. It's almost like, I think in Freud, in the interpretation of dreams, there is almost, I believe, like the forgetting is kind of an important mechanism. Like memory is an important mechanism, but we can't remember everything. And I don't exactly remember how it all goes, but in a sense, there's a value to not remembering everything. Otherwise, your brain's just going to be overwhelmed with information. It's like a reboot, to continue with the computer analogy. And so the reason I do it at the end of the day, let's say, rather than the beginning of the day, is because if I was to try and do a journal of yesterday this morning, I'm going to miss a whole bunch of details. Kind of because I just had an 8-hour sleep, I would argue, at least for me, the way I work. So all to say, ingredients of a successful day, courtesy of your internet TV friend here. Now, check this out. It actually weirdly relates, I would argue. Die with the most likes. Kind of an underrepresented artist here. Interesting, basically, we could technically call this crypto art, interestingly. Art that is adopted by the crypto community. Celebrated by the crypto community. So in that respect, we can call this crypto art, but I would say there is an overlap with what I like to call art on the blockchain. And to to kind of illustrate the spectrum of what I mean by that, as I have many times before, but there's always new viewers, and it's always kind of worth kind of being clear. On the far end of what we might call crypto art is what we might call PFPs, or profile picture projects, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, these basically pictures, but they're kind of selling oftentimes for thousands and thousands of dollars, and they kind of get mixed in. So as a point of convenience, I group everything that is kind of adopted and celebrated by the crypto community. We might call it images adopted and celebrated by the crypto community as a category of sorts. Now, sometimes those images that are adopted and celebrated by the crypto community, we could say are poetic images in some cases. I think we could say with artists like Uxine, with artists like Die With The Most Likes, we start to get overlap with what I would call art on the blockchain. And there could be all sorts of debates of what, where other artists might fit in between. For me, this is an unambiguous example because of, and why? Because I would argue of kind of what we were discussing before, last episode, discussing the width and height of an image, because of the poetry. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. Also, of course, the execution, also the prolificness, which builds its own credibility. And of course, Die With The Most Likes, as many of you who are on X know, has been one of the most prolific people, frankly, one of the most prolific artists in the entire space, perhaps the most. One could argue that. So what do we have here? Back to the poetry. And you just gotta love the zooming in here. I believe this is full size. So here's an interesting aspect of this, I would argue, is we're starting to get how Die With The Most Likes might see this work, even though he probably even zooms in. Of course, one of the weird qualities of digital art is being able to zoom in almost infinitely, not quite, but where you're zooming in. But, where when he's working on it, this is what you start to, experience here. When you look at it like this, you might kind of miss the experience. And it brings up a couple of, let's call it an important point here, which is we were discussing last time how in the contemporary art world, one of the main metrics that they use to value a work of art is the width and the height of the work. The width and the height of the work basically times the multiple of the artist based on their museum shows, based on their previous selling history, etc. Weirdly, and this is something I didn't mention last episode, it seems less relevant, width and height, or what we might call scale, in the digital world. And I wonder if that's because our screens or our phones or whatever your viewing device is, our viewport, are kind of, in a sense, everything tends to fit the screen in terms of the width. So it doesn't seem to have the same significance, or at least financial importance. Could you imagine valuing a work based on the amount of pixels? It seems kind of, potentially ridiculous. Look at maybe case in point, to use another crypto art example, look at CryptoPunks, right? I mean, those are how many, like 8 by 8 pixels, whatever it is, maybe 16 by 16. I can't remember, right? So all to say, let's come back to the work here. Now, what do we see? We, of course, Die With The Most Likes, for those that are new, you might call a great satirist, I would say, of the contemporary world. Kind of in the spirit, I would argue, at least for my kind of constellation of influences, kind of in the spirit of William Burroughs, right? Pretty edgy and dark, wicked satirist, you might say. There's humor, but there's kind of a truth to the humor, and it's kind of unflinching. And so what do we see here? First of all, we see what looks like 3 older people, right? Here, and here. Perhaps almost like the kind of table you would find in a, care facility. And it kind of brings, for me personally, it brings it back home as the final, months of my dad's life. We're in a care facility. And you look at the visual kind of references here, and you kind of start to make, those are the first associations I start to come to. Now, what else do we see? We see these figures here, which seem to be almost earlier, younger versions of these three figures, if I was to just kind of interpret this. So we see almost these kind of earlier versions where they're more in the business world here, but, with full on, for lack of a better term, I don't want to say full on conformity, but full on in the world, so to speak, which for Die with the Most Likes has a lot of perhaps faults, this world. And so we almost see this mirroring of these three figures. We see what looks like a game show audience. And again, for those that know Die with the Most Likes work, you'll remember some of the works are black and white, all black and white, and they're either usually, I've never seen it where he combines the black and white works with the color works, but that seems to be what we're seeing here, interestingly. And we see what's almost like a game show, talk show audience, almost looking on at these figures here, and what looks like masks in the fridge, some sort of kind of portable fridge or something, perhaps put on, these masks put on here. Almost these are the masks that have been put on, the older versions of these figures. So we kind of have some ambiguity here, clearly. It could mean a lot of things. There's even ambiguity here within, are these hands, right? Almost like, but are they puppet strings almost? And you see this interesting, almost like shadow. And again, these like Mickey Mouse hands, this old technology, right? We have the video camera. We have the tiny TV, interestingly, but, from another era. We have the One More Year, which is mirroring, actually, the people in here. And it brings up a whole other care facility reference. And I don't know if Die with the Most Likes, if I imagine this was the intention. I don't know. If it was, it's quite brilliant. And that might be an understatement to call it brilliant. Because one of the, it's straight out of a Die with the Most Likes one of the weirdest phenomenons of the care facility is seeing people basically at the end of their lives, they're not going to escape. This is their last, home, so to speak. And I put home in quotes. And there they are watching old versions of The Price is Right, 1970s, 1980s game shows, maybe Dallas, and it kind of evokes, as we see here, this TV, this old TV at the center of their lives. And you have these little awards, the snow globe, these absurd little awards, the medal, the trophy that really doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. You did it, one more year of life to watch these game shows, to spend your time, your final days. So what does it ultimately, one could argue, show, as we see the little recording device here up in the corner too? Almost ambiguous, that blood red circle. It shows a kind of the meaninglessness, I would argue. I dare say it borders on the meaninglessness of contemporary society. Dare we say. So who knows? Just my little, maybe I'm projecting too much here. But a vacuum of meaning seems to be what we see here. As we see almost the Dali-like flies, gathering on the old technology. And the VHS tapes, ready for the VCR. Even the sad little flowers on the bowl. Everything has been turned to absurdity and horrific absurdity, in a sense. In the stage here, as the masses, as the people as all of us kind of clap on. You did it. One more year. You're still alive. So who knows what all this meant? Now, we know what it meant in terms of money. I mean, this is pretty amazing. 19 ETH. So we're talking about almost $40,000 here this sold for. So old shows. Now, interesting title there too. Again, seems to relate to the TV, but also could mean like these people themselves. Are they old game show hosts? This old performances? Ambiguous title, wonderfully ambiguous title. Die with the most likes with a stunner here. And then here it is. We stood on shore recreating a ticker tape parade with what little remained of a beached whale who drowned in the pitiless tide. And here, yes, so it basically kind of continues in that fashion. I didn't want to read it all in case sometimes it gets rough in those, sometimes it gets rough in there. Anyways, huge sale. Congrats to Die with the Most Likes. I am not in jail. So this was actually done Gallery Weekend, as someone pointed out. Who was it? Someone noticed that this was actually I believe it was Amelia. That this was actually a gin and tonic. Yes, we were at Nagel Drexler as part of Gallery Weekend, and so we were having fun. And so it just kind of made for Instagram moment. So the reason I show that, first of all, it was just an installation, which you could go inside. But the reason I show is because we got some awesome responses here. Uxine, almost, thank you, Manny. So Manny posted this, as well as Josh. So hilarious. So thank you, Uxine. And we also got another one from Austin. Awesome pixel art version, and we also got Rada. So I feel appreciated and loved out here, even when I'm in jail. And awesome piece here, and thank you for sending this to me, Rada. Really rad ordinal, very cool. So thank you all, and everything is okay. I got a few. I guess it looks more convincing than I realized. I got a couple of messages of concern. Surprisingly to me. Now, I don't think we actually have any. I don't think we have any comments. We have no comments this episode. Amazing. Here we do on X. We do, and thank you for the nice response here. Trippy Collector, great show, AP, and so to those gorgeous feels pieces. Absolutely perfect artist for episode 420. As I told Trippy, I literally thought of Trippy for episode 420. Congrats on a wonderful accomplishment. Thank you. Yeah, it is pretty amazing, isn't it? Just goes to show it's that daily kind of, or, the scheduled grind, let's call it, 3 days a week here. 420, great to hear from you, man. Neural Divine, thank you for the comment. Lipson Black, thank you for the support. Trinetto Rodriguez, 420. 420 already. I will have to light one up. Kurt Hustle Collective, happy 420. And to you, my friends, Collectors Official, great to hear from you. Awesome. Jan Lucas Magone, shiny start. Yes, and I believe... Yeah, and beautiful works by Feels. Juniper Paisley, thank you for the comment. Sabato, 420. So people enjoying 420. And we heard from Feels awesomely. I appreciate your commentary on visual knowledge, new experiences, innovation, and the small amount of artwork I've tokenized given the number of years we've been at this now. These dynamics are often not noticed and not appreciated, so thank you. It takes time and lived experience. Yes, this is I'm actually surprised that it took this long for this to become a title here, because that's, in a sense, it's not really spoken about. But part of the benefits, particularly one could argue, of abstraction, digital or physical, is like, what are you engaging in? How are you not wasting your time? And you could argue one of the main things you're benefiting from when you consume, say, abstract art, for example, is new visual experiences. And a new experience does create, I would argue, I think, inevitably, a kind of knowledge, interestingly. So thank you, Feels. Awesome to hear from you. And wonderful work, as ever. I think I started the show at least one or two other times with Fields, so at least once for sure. So wonderful to start. And as Trippy said, it kind of worked beautifully. Oblivion Fields, love me some Fields. On IPFS backup, I pay for a pinning service, and for me, it's a negligible cost to keep the art I make and collect backed up and discoverable online, particularly compared to the cost of caring for physical art. This is an excellent point. Running a node cuts costs even more. So I think it was $20 a month, which is actually quite a bit of money. When you put all these subscriptions, as people know, they kind of add up, right? So everybody's trying to cut back, or at least I am. I'm always trying to cut back on subscriptions. But I think I brought this up actually in a couple of tabs. Otherwise, maybe we'll come back because it does go through really quickly how you can back up with IPFS. Marina Abramovich, MAE Element. So the new, I don't know if this is AI, but it is followed by Maker's Place. So not sure, 22 followers. Maybe this is a new account. Of course, Marina Abramovich Element is the new avatar of Marina Abramovich's return to NFTs. So we'll see what happens there. Brian Brinkman. So this is actually what Oblivion Fields linked to. Artists, how to secure your digital art via IPFS nodes, the easy way. As time goes on, many minted artworks are at risk, and it's up to us to secure them. So here's a simple way to add a layer of security by adding additional pins. I wonder, though, can I just put this on my own kind of cloud? In the sense, what I would love to have, rather than do all this, is I just want to be able to go to Object, for example, or any platform and hit Export Collection, and then it takes everything I've collected, puts it in a zip file, or 2 or 5, and I guess it would be a lot of images, and then something that I can download. And then I'll just put it on my own Google Cloud. Right? And then I don't need to pay anybody anything. And then it'll be my responsibility, just like a real physical work of art. It's my responsibility to make sure that that continues to exist and doesn't get destroyed. So nevertheless, go to Brian Brinkman's page, or this was linked to in the comments of last video. So here is how you do it, but it's $20 a month. Or you can set up your own node and do this for free. But I imagine that involves other issues. So here you go, you add the pin, but it's $20 a month. And I think, I believe Club NFT was only 10. So all to say, thank you for the info. And it's quite interesting, this debate between Arweave. Arweave sounds like it's just more, again, reliable. So let's see. Sabato. Digital world assets is a much better term than NFTs, but I just like saying digital editions because many people outside Web3, I think the words crypto, I could be totally wrong. And actually the general trend in the culture is that crypto is actually kind of becoming bigger in terms of what we see, say, with the US government and this adoption of Bitcoin. But I kind of like when I see Web3, even that doesn't feel... There's something about the words crypto and Web3 that to me, I'm just kind of bearish on the terms. And I've been hard on crypto to a certain degree, but I still love, it's still my favorite investment class. And I still have my little projects that I'm excited about, or even big projects outside of Bitcoin. Although I do tend to move more towards Bitcoin over time, interestingly. But when I see Web3 even, when I see NFT, when I see crypto, those words I'm kind of bearish on from a cultural standpoint, even though the underlying ideas I'm not, weirdly. Let's continue. But because many people outside Web3 don't want to think of digital art as something that's essentially financialized. Art is primarily art, being an asset class is secondary. Right, so Sabato is responding to Sonzo, who is responding to Kim Asendorf, who wants to call them digital world assets. Now, I completely agree with Sabato on one hand. Assets is definitely a financial term. I mean, so Sabato wants to call them digital editions, but what about the one-of-ones? And what about things like put it this way, my replacement words for NFTs is digital objects, which I think are it's just more, shall we say, it's kind of conceptually what they are. As far as digital assets, first of all, the editor in me is wanting to kill world. World is unnecessary here. Why? Why do we need world? So digital assets, you can start to make the argument, but I would argue, but I'd agree with Sabato in the sense that it's a financial term. And I think it's already used as a financial term. So is world somehow, representing NFTs or objects, as I like to call them, digital objects? I don't think it helps from just a semantic point of view. And I don't even understand what the dashes are. So, and I don't even know if that's what Kim Asendorf is getting at here. It seems to be what Sonzo is interpreting. I love this from Kim Asendorf's. NFTs are a poor technical name for something much bigger, digital world assets. So, again, I agree with Sabato. This is a financial term, assets, and it's already used. And in terms of digital world assets, it doesn't explain what they are. Whereas I think digital objects explains exactly what they are. They are digital objects, and some of them aren't even art, right? As we see, sometimes people have talked about, we could use a certificate of authenticity. It's a digital object, right? I guess you could use virtual, but I prefer digital. So anyways, interesting debate. Thank you for bringing it up, Sabato. Of course, I followed the great Gogolitis. Let me just reload that to fix that error. I believe the world is a work of art, and that inspiration plays a crucial role in it. I thought this was a great comment, and it kind of brings me back to, art and inspiration are interestingly related, and poetry, actually. And when we say something's poetic, we could almost say it's inspired, I would argue. And so, going back to last episode and this whole contemporary art value, general valuing of art as the width times the height times the multiple, a very financialized kind of way of thinking about it. It's an attempt at objectivity, really. And that's why I say you can't be too hard on the art scene, because look at all the art out there. Like, are you going to have like a pondering, subjective, and based on what? So they need metrics. But I think what this brings up in Gogolitis's comment is the real work of art, if something's, what about a CryptoPunk? Like, that's whatever it is, 10 or 12 or 8 pixels by 8 pixels, whatever it is, 12 pixels. Does it make sense that shouldn't be worth anything, even as a collectible or however you want to term it? In a sense, looking at a work of art, inspiration, let's just put it this way, and poetry, to me, is kind of more crucial to valuing that work than the millimeters or the pixel size. It doesn't really translate that well, does it? The physical metric to digital, as I was mentioning before, perhaps by virtue of the size that we consume this generally on screens, weirdly, and that they are malleable to the screen. So it kind of renders mute or irrelevant the width and height to a certain degree. So interesting. This was interesting too. So Mallow, which I believe is a Solana-based platform. Hello, Tezos. Mallow now aggregates object.com. You can now see all your Solana and object artwork in one place. Head to Mallow and connect your Tezos wallet to import your artworks. So I'm always quite hesitant. Let's say I basically connect to object and that's it. Let's not forget what happened to Martin Bruce not that long ago. At least, yeah. So now this is interesting, though, in the sense that what if you start getting Solana, because Solana's still pretty big despite all the problems they've had. I was just listening to a podcast before I started this show that the metrics on Solana, as far as users and this kind of mainstream adoption, it's doing pretty well still. So what happens if all of a sudden, because now that if a Solana-based platform basically aggregates a Tezos platform so to speak. I mean, how big of a bridge is it, or how big of a gap will it be to say, hey, you can just buy that work for X sol, that Tezos work. All they have to do is have the liquidity in terms of enough Tezos and enough Solana to make that conversion for you. Like you would, using a credit card, buying euros with your Canadian or American-based credit card, right? So it's kind of interesting in that sense. Perhaps bullish, really, for Tezos art, interestingly. This is also, so we've been hearing about 01. Someone was just mentioning it. Was it Evelyn? 01 just launched a gasless creator-first blockchain built on Avalanche. So 01 was a platform before. They have, and this is interesting, gasless. Creator-first blockchain, no gas fees, perpetual royalties, and on-chain comments. Now, what I'm still waiting for, and maybe this is what Arweave is, or what Arweave or IPFS should do, is what I would like, and maybe that's kind of already what the infrastructure has, but I've been mentioning this for over a year, maybe longer, that the ideal is that the block size is big enough of a blockchain that you don't need, that the blockchain itself is all that we need, and we don't need to pin it to anywhere or do any saving to Google Drive or anything. That it's basically like Bitcoin ordinals, let's say, even though I just ran into Clown Vamp here, and he's saying, well, actually, that one needs nodes too. I was surprised to see that, because you see the ordinals community just says how immutable everything is. So I'm kind of almost back to Bitcoin stamps. Interestingly, for the true permanence, at least insofar as the Bitcoin blockchain is concerned. But really what would be ideal is if you basically have a Bitcoin type blockchain, maybe proof of work proof of stake if you're concerned about the environment, but instead of a 2 or 4 megabyte, I believe it is, block, you have a 400 megabyte block or something like this. It's designed specifically for art, and it's all basically on chain, not just the comments, but the work itself. I think there's a real argument that could be made for that. Now, I don't know, maybe that's unpractical. I'm not an expert in, cryptography and how that works, but I'm kind of surprised. And maybe that's what IPFS is, just without like the marketplace side of it. Or maybe that's what Arweave is, without the marketplace side of it. Interestingly, powered by Avalanche subnets, it's fast, scalable, and custom. Web3 just got way more creator-friendly. So I'll have to didn't we look last episode briefly? Some of the images were broken, but other than that, it's looking pretty sharp, I have to say. Sonzo being very topical recently, aren't they? Thinking about things that are currently maintaining interest in this market, I find it interesting noticing the various tribes consolidating and supporting certain scenes. Crypto art, and yeah, there has been, like, you see the sale of Die with the Most Likes. There has been, people were talking about how Xcopy, to mention the crypto art scene, has been doing really well recently. There has been a resurgence in the prices of what I would call crypto art. Art, again, embraced by the crypto community. So that is interesting. Generative art is having a bit of a moment and consolidating. So interesting groupings here. There's the AI art people or tribe. There's the network art people. And I'm trying to think of who that might be. Because, network, it's like almost like they're trying to turn it into an ism. I remember this, and maybe they did. I can't remember. I feel like I saw a Charlie Rose episode a while ago, like 20 years ago, on how the network is the new kind of philosophy, right? So network art. I'm not sure exactly, like, I can imagine maybe what this means, some sort of internet-based art, but I don't even know. Blockchain as medium, something we see every so often. Is it Matt Cain, right? Where the movement and changes in the blockchain affect how the work is manifests, basically. And I thought this was hilarious. The Tezos avant-garde. Wonderful. So we're on the list, my friends. And now, it's interesting to hear it described as an avant-garde. Because weirdly, Like in my own mind, I wouldn't call it an avant-garde, even though you could. Maybe, like, it depends what your frame of reference is. But from my own perspective, it's actually not an avant-garde at all. It's kind of just what I'd call the native internet art that has become sophisticated. It's just sophisticated art. It's just art, in a sense. It's kind of, I call it art on the blockchain. It's kind of like what some people would call fine art, but it's basically just art. But it's competent. It's very sophisticated at times. Is it avant-garde? Sometimes you could probably look at Nov 1914 as avant-garde because of the sheer pushing. We're going to see a couple more works, and it's like, if I had seen these works without the long history behind Nov 1914's work, I would never show them. But when you see Nov 1914 is doing it, and you see the history and the competence, then you go, oh, what on earth is this? Right? And I have to take this seriously. In that respect, I'd say that's kind of avant-garde. But is waffles, or making your own tools? This is, to me, just being an artist of the present, actually, not an avant-garde. Even though I think what we're doing in terms of the general public, let's say, making art with your own tools that is put on the Bitcoin blockchain, that's kind of science fiction. As far as I would argue the rest of the world's concerned, because most people don't even realize you can put art on Bitcoin, is what I've realized. And they're always kind of impressed, actually, because it sounds very bullish, right? Anyways, interesting list from Sonzo. And I thought I would mention this, and of course I follow Myth. Here's Myth's cat. Today I say goodbye to my companion Ringo. I had to record this on this show. Thank you for these 12 years of unconditional love. You came into my life during a difficult time. I love you, Ringo. You'll always be with me. Thank you. So a beautiful post from the very human Myth. And yes, goodbye to Ringo. This was quite something, I thought. Like kind of a head turner here. David Dees. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this person. But I had never heard of them, was a controversial American artist known for dropping truth nukes through his provocative reality-based artwork. People have speculated that his increasing paranoia and extreme themes were linked to health issues from exposure to toxic fumes while airbrushing. It's kind of like it's very interesting, this work. As you see here, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, the kind of what you might call the quintessential, almost like Alex Jones InfoWars type artist, let's say, for lack of a better term. And maybe that's even unfair to David Dees. But it's kind of a lot of the kind of classic conspiratorial themes and subject matter here. Vaccines, etc. Here, tasers. So edgy works, Wi-Fi, right? Here's the blue pill, right? Drones. It's almost like, or, you could also say, maybe not Alex Jones, but Noam Chomsky. But I don't know if Noam Chomsky would go this far. Chicago under attack from aliens from outer space. So kind of a pretty interesting artist, though. The Federal Reserve, all the classic themes, but is so consistent. There's a Terminator, more Wi-Fi. I shouldn't laugh. Sheeple. So there's the Federal Reserve again. So just kind of interesting. I found this one kind of, and then, just like the expressions on the face. So kind of a wild artist. I don't even know what this is. Read the NASA war document. So vaccine, so just kind of wild work here. Kind of terrifying too. So I share it here. Here's Santiago, me and my art. So toning things down a little bit. Very nice piece here. Kind of pixel influenced, nice kind of physical work here from Santiago. Beautiful. Also, now this is interesting. So Dan Control, so unnecessary, almost continuing on the previous theme, but it's actually meant to go on to the next theme here, which is showing all the elements of a work and then kind of making a work out of just elements. and repetition because, as you see here, Dan Control pointing out all of this kind of weaponry and military equipment. And then we saw this. I thought I'd juxtapose it with here. Pinstake, also known as Hasdrubal Waffle. Dear Ripper holders, you have just received Under the Sea, which is all the study assets on the spare of DPaint in GIF format. And also a copy of Ripper 01, the Ultimate Ripper. Might be in a hidden tab of OpenSea. Enjoy. And so I believe I have this right. So here, and isn't it weird how OpenSea, it looks like Blur, doesn't it? So go figure. This is the new OpenSea. And there's Hasdrubal. That's hilarious. Kind of signed here. So all of the elements here put together, making a piece. And if Waffles hadn't said that, you would just say, oh, here's another piece, right? And so it's kind of fun, actually. You look at it, you could almost have a room of these kind of pieces. I think Sabato has also done a work like that of deluxe paint elements. So interesting. Very, very interesting. And we got some more from Hasdrubal Waffle. This is on Foundation or Ethereum, probably on Manifold. See if it loads up here. And I guess it's a big file. Kind of looks like a custom tool. Here it comes. Kind of looks like a custom tool because it's not obvious, is it, what is being used here? So almost an abstraction, kind of looks like a picture of a person and then separated and then just kind of moving around on its own. So more interesting work sold for 0.2. OMNHT. Here's another work, Blow Dry. And so this is loading up. Kind of looks like someone driving a car. If it loads up here. Here we go. So here, and not exactly sure what's going on there. Some different elements. So kind of looks like a couple of different softwares, but not sure. So cool work. This also sold for 0.15. And then we got a couple of works from Pinstake, also same artist, on Tezos. And let me get the audio. Pretty cool animation. So that goes for a minute, interestingly. So there is one edition of 6, and as you see here, and Neon Monk picking one up for 200 Tezos. And an offer coming in from DeGD. So excitement around, it's pretty good for editions of 6. Here's another edition of 6. And let's see, let's get this bigger. And you see the use of the user interface once again. So again, I think we're dealing with custom tools or it's Fantavision. Hard to say. And we're kind of back to the juxtaposition of this kind of deep music with these works, which really creates its own kind of vibe. Continuing on, Canik Zapata, an edition of 1, collecting art is like planting a seed in the garden. Beautiful piece here. And so continuing, I think, with the collector theme, and again, Stable Diffusion, Python, the cellular automata, and you just have to love the texture here of these works and everything, and the different patterning and the wonderful computer. Pretty incredible. Only 60 Tezos, so pretty reasonable considering how much even the editions are going for. That's a 1 of 1. Uxine, Dread Tapes Volume 1, and so here, this almost has a bit of a Stable Diffusion vibe to it. But I don't know. And generally speaking, Uxine does not use AI, so who knows? But you see it in almost the choppy pixels. Cool work here. So it looks like a still life, doesn't it? A la Uxine. This is part of Dread Tapes, and maybe there is the tape recorder. Very nice series here. And there is Uxine, who is missing. Call 666. And Web 0, so very cool work. Edition of 22 and selling out at 33 Tezos. So nice haul for Uxine. This is pretty cool too. I need to pick one of these up. There's 2 more days. A test drive. This is by Martin Bruce. So a collection of all of the works put together as an open edition of Test Drive. Wonderful choice of game there. Edition of 21, and those are $4.50 each, and 21 have been minted so far. This was a very cool work, picked up by Neon Monk. Had to be quick probably on that one. 99 Tezos, Dead Nature Study. What does it say here? Pixel sampled oil pastels. Pretty rad work here by Ed Marola. As we see more sampled brushes, but it's getting more abstract, shall we say. Like, look at this outline here. Very nice. Looks like, again, this is sampled. Maybe doing Ed's own sampling of pastels. Not exactly sure. But it looks like a still life. And then you get this super sharp kind of dithering. So what I also love here, too, is this, what looks like maybe a rag or some sort of towel or something, or, part of a cloth. What I love about this, too, is it's not shaded here. It's just kind of straight fill, which gives it a real poetic feeling. This is a very poetic work, I would argue. Beautiful, beautiful, really original digital art still life. Edition of 1, 99 Tezos, $56. Pretty good deal, nice pickup. Here's Ed Marola also, so put out a few works here, as you see. And here, more of a scene. So it's getting a little more abstract here from Ed Marola. Interestingly, still a lot of sampled brushes. This is an edition of 26 for 5 Tezos. And so 16 gone. So providing, price points for everyone. This is an edition of 10. And this is, what did this sell for? 11 Tezos. So a few different works here playing with with sampled brushes primarily, but different kinds of structures. We're seeing some experimentation here, for sure, with Ed Marola's work. So very cool. And here's one more. 2 men pruning a very strange tree looking for fruits, flowers, or seeds of another tree that has nothing to do with reality. Interesting. So also here we see experimentation, sampled brushes, tiling perhaps here, big pixels, small pixels. Edition of 5. And that was for 26 Tezos and sold out. Very interesting. Sabato, continuing to seemingly experiment with Fantavision, perhaps. And you got to love this background, actually, of these kind of diagonal pixels here. And here we have what looks like a manta ray. And this looks like classic Fantavision animation, seemingly. Stang, not sure what that is, but cool looking work. Here's Goyoung, good morning. Not sure if this is new, this could be older. Look at the response, 72 retweets, 782 likes. A beautiful work here by Goyoung Arts, good morning. So just a plant, really nice piece. Here's a Kurt Hustle Collective with a fabulous work. Hilarious. Awesome. Back to the music. Just amazing. Wow. Kind of a satire unto itself. Amazing, amazing work. Amazing. 13 Tezos. Edition of 50. Gomu Kumo, Golf Champion. Amazing. And there are 44 left for that brilliant work of art there by the Kurt Hustle Collective. Here's Nov 1914. I was mentioning these works earlier. So some pretty edgy works here. by Nuv 1914. And if you're new, you might be like, what is going on here? One of the most prolific and interesting artists in the scene here, making some pretty edgy works. So always, so this is 100 Tezos, edition of 1. Here's another one. Slightly different colors. This went to Daggy D. And you see here playing with what looks like a blur of some kind, right? Maybe the smudge tool, which is, it's kind of like the mosaic tool, which is incredibly hard to make work. Daggy D picking this up for 100 Tezos. Interesting as ever from Nuv 1914. Here's Gozo with a beautiful work here. Vibe debugging. Again, looks like AI color, like this palette is so gorgeous. And you see here, it's a combination of stable diffusion, digital collage, and maybe some digital painting, if memory serves. Edition of 5, sold out, or transferred to other collectors. Beautiful piece here from Gozo. And here is Kazuhiro Ehira. Let us play. So I believe this has no volume, indeed. So another super interesting artist in the scene here, playing with all sorts of rough textures and animations and, process, actually, is what you see here. And so another experiment with the process, Sex, Lies, and Video Art, edition of 6. This is an Foregone for 39 Tezos. So it's wonderful out here that you can be so experimental and get support. It's really amazing. I mean, these people, including myself, but, people who buy this work, like it really, it's the fuel. As I say, like this free market here, that these collectors, how important they are. This is Enigmatris. Octopath Traveler frames modified by ASCII elements, and we should speed up just a touch. So another example of basically a work that looks like Edward Muybridge, but done a la Enigmatris. And here, another example. Gotta love this kind of noisiness here, as this looks like a dog going through a hula hoop, and you see all of these different renditions. Brilliant. And the market, or at least the X, liking it quite a bit there. Here's Mikael Nolson. Cool abstract here. This is on Instagram. As we continue here. So nice abstract from Mikael Nolson. Here's Walk 33, probably continuing with the Guantanamo series, I assume. Which seems to be a follow-up of the 9/11 series, calling it The War, edition of 1. This is at 4 Tezos. Famtez putting in a bid. And continuing on, Mumbleboy, Manufacturing Personality. Cool title. So Mumbleboy, again, more diagonal pixels here, interestingly. So beautiful experimentation and kind of almost these cartoony type figures. And we have another one by Gozo here, Little Automatic, edition of 1. This is 18 Tezos. And again, just a slightly 80s look to the colors and a combination of physical and digital, as only Mumbleboy can. Collage and digital. And here we have what looks like a dispenser, Rudsev, Heaven's Taste. So interesting, kind of maybe Japanese dispenser of some kind. Coding inside, some blood, and then a hand that is chopped off. So interesting piece. Huge response there. 90,000 views. Wow. Nice blue background there too, just kind of a flat blue. Here's Sad Girl. Good to see Sad Girl. One of those artists I remember collecting years ago, 2 years ago, more. Nice piece here. Kind of where anime meets kind of like, it's kind of arty anime with a lot of textures and glitch, let's say, anime and glitch. Here's Françoise Gamma with some interesting pieces here. So this is on Instagram, and I guess there was inspiration from Lulu IXIX. So nice to mention that. And here is a digital abstract, animated abstract by Françoise Gamma, and here's one more. So very cool. Here's E-Boy Arts, nice abstract here. Love the red and white. Kind of reminds me of that Tintin going to the moon by Hergé. Koneko. So another beautiful Japanese pixel artwork. from Kaneko of a cat. 0 to hero. This is Sachu. So pixel art work here, a person, 0 trapped in a circuit board that is on object. Here's Human Boy linking to Perfect Loop, traveling through the mediums, Notepad and Paint. Yeah, I was wondering, is this traveling through the mediums, I thought to myself. I mean, if the Notepad was physical, then I would say yes, but I think we're going from digital to digital. We're almost traveling through the softwares. Now, the argument can be made that different softwares are akin to different mediums. So I will grant you this, Human Boy, but cool piece, as you see here, going from Notepad to Paint. Thank you for posting that in the community. Here's Element Lee, and let's see if we can zoom in even more. As you see here, different variations. We're kind of back to this interesting repetition of elements and digital repetition that is possible in this medium so easily. Love the juxtaposition and even just the general structure here. Multi-angle drawing. Cool title. Here is Yuran Yakun with some beautiful textures here, continuing the stream as subject matter, stream number 42, edition of 7 for Tezos. Here's Nebular, currently on display. Nice piece. Kind of soothing grays here, a figure that seems to be masking a different kind of patterning, and nice big chunky pixels on top. Beautiful piece, edition of 10, and sold out at 8 Tezos. Nice work. Analog video glitch. Here's Renki with a couple of works, Tenohata. So more spectacular animated abstract from Renki. This one, beautiful black and white. Here is maybe 4 colors, Fudai, edition of 10. A rare edition of 10. This is 4 Tezos each, so your opportunity to get a Renki work. And here's Klaus, picked up by Rushmeyer, composition number 450. Wow. So nice animated abstract from Klaus. Still at it. 21 Tezos, keeping the price. Love it. Ex-Mortal, ISO. Some more analog video glitch, continuing to use nature as a theme. Love the green sun there. Nice piece, edition of 3, and selling or transferred to, and maybe 1 sold there. On the market, Gino, Koichi. So another kind of, you see all sorts of, analog video glitch here. All sorts of different video glitch, let's call it. And here, different variations on a highway. Edition of 10, and this is 13 Tezos, and sold out on primary. Here is Hicket Nook 2000, kind of looking Stable Diffusion-esque with a kind of cartoon-esque figure here. And almost like pixel art horror kind of look. Or what is it, Emily? Remember Emily? So nice work here, edition of 125 Tezos. Here's Skamra. Beautiful, like the textures are getting more elaborate here with Skamra, as well as the outlines and everything. It continues to push forward. Nice frame device there too, and cool head, cool face. Stable diffusion and diffusers, textual inversions, and here is another one. Woman on a laptop, and you see just the frame on the left. So almost looking like a modern impressionist painting. But using AI, and here's another work, also by Skamra. As you see, almost the operating system in the background, or the Windows operating system. And again, the textures continue to be pushed forward here. Super interesting. Here's No Hygiene. And this has music. Now, that is Sienna Sleep, so I don't want to put it on just so we don't get flagged for copyright. So cool, again, pushing things forward here. So taking the angel and then making it a little more cartoony in these works here. And here's Ebzer Deity, Desire for Peace. Background art for banquet chairs created using a combination of Midjourney and Journey Paint, minted to rodeo.club. So nice AI artwork here, AI painting by Ebzer Deity. It almost looks like a textile work. Here is Ken Consumer. Royal rights, the NFT acts as provenance for the physical piece pictured. So this is, again, almost like the certificate of authenticity, one could say, of this physical work here. That is made, of course, Ken Consumer here in Berlin. Met him a couple of times. He showed me the pen plotter works a couple of years ago. I need to go and revisit that. Walk, Revenge is Never a Straight Line. Beautiful work. Kind of looks like Kill Bill or something. Another brilliant portrait from Walk. That's a physical. Here is Ilya Barabin, Coffee and Cigarette, photo of a physical work, A3 paper, airbrush, and acrylic. Another interesting, great contrast here between the hard lines and the airbrush. Nice, not too many colors, which is nice. Moto Moto Hero. Just another surreal drawing from this super cool artist, I believe out of Japan. And here's also Moto Moto Hero. As we pass the hour mark right at the end of the show here, another just almost looking like Power Rangers, doesn't it? Interesting texture on here too. Not exactly sure what's going on. What does it say? It doesn't say anything. And here's Ochiai Shohei, a cap, and also nice color, kind of minimal, and the best cap, that's called. Here's also Ochiai Shohei. I laugh, I cry, I get angry. So interesting. Almost looks like digital coloring. Maybe it's all digital. I'm not sure. Tamagotchi. That's great. It's Not Gallery showing Ricardo Passaporte. So someone painting a horse. I quite like this piece. Another just example of exciting artwork. Interestingly, at Gallery Weekend here, you didn't really see art like this. But I find like the energy, I'd actually say, is in artwork like this, the airbrush. I didn't really see any airbrush that I remembered during Gallery Weekend here in Berlin, which is interesting. Here's Dan Control. Nice painting here, probably of a magazine, as we've seen before. Great subject matter there. And here is, I believe, Eloy. And as you see here, a big heart with a mouth in it, perhaps, and almost looking like a dentist or a doctor's office. So cool work there. And that is your show, my friends, at an hour and 1 minute. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, take care.